a forsaken frontier, a harrowing journey, and unsung heroes. That's the setting for Blood Message, a new game that puts you in the shoes of a messenger, heading out on a suicide mission bearing news of hope. Hello folks. Before we begin, you should really pause this video and go check out the trailer for Blood Message. Then come back. Good? Okay, welcome back. So, as a history buff, when I saw the trailer last night, I got really excited. Not just because it looked like a really fun game, which reminded me of Ghost of Tsushima and Uncharted series, but because it's set in a very interesting period in Chinese history that is not often covered. The aftermath of the Dunhuang rebellion and the rise of the Guiyi army. If you're scratching your head, don't worry. We'll break down the game's known details, then dive deep into the history that makes this setting so compelling. So, stick around. Before we begin, let me quickly introduce myself. My name is Jack. I am the chief editor and artist of Dragon's Armory blog. The blog is mainly focused on Chinese military history and covers Chinese history from the ancient times all the way until 1912. I am also a professional animator and a digital illustrator of over 15 years of experience. I worked on mobile games, board games, movies, concept art, and book covers. Here's what NetEase revealed about Blood Message. It is a single-player, narrative-focused action-adventure game, coming to PC and consoles. The setting is late Tang Dynasty, specifically 848 AD, and the Dunhuang Uprising. You'll be playing as a messenger on a perilous journey. A key point is that NetEase is marketing this as their first fully self-developed, true single-player game, with developers from AAA studios. A global release is planned, but no date has been announced. As for the rest, I believe the exquisite graphics and ambitious presentation really speaks for itself. For my part, I can't wait to play this game and explore this period on a very personal level. With that said, let's dive into the setting itself. For centuries, Dunhuang was a proving ground between empires locked in mortal struggle. Situated along the strategically vital Heshi corridor, this arid, narrow passage served as the sole linchpin connecting the Chinese imperial heartland in the east to the vast expanses of the west. Prior to the beginning of this game, for a century, the Tang Dynasty and the Tibetan Empire engaged in a protracted contest for dominance over the strategically vital corridor. The Tang, then at its zenith, viewed the western region as an integral part of its empire, a source of tribute, trade into the Silk Road, and a point of power projection. The Tibetan Empire, also a rising power approaching its zenith, also saw the Heshi corridor as a key to projecting its own influence westward. What's more, should they ever sever the very narrow corridor, they could easily bisect the Tang directly in the middle, leaving the western region completely isolated and have to fend for themselves, without imperial protection. The struggle for Dunhuang intensified following the Dunhuang rebellion, a cataclysmic event that shattered the Tang Dynasty's internal stability and exposed its vulnerabilities to external threats. The rebellion, which lasted for nearly a decade, devastated the Tang heartland, decimated its armies, and crippled its economy. Taking advantage of the Tang's weakened state, the Tibetan Empire launched a series of relentless invasions, pushing deep into the Heshi corridor, and gradually wrestled control of key regions for itself. The Tibetan strategy was clear: to sever the Tang's connection to the western regions, isolate its garrisons and disrupting the flow of trade and resources. Dunhuang, as the gateway to the west, became the epicenter of this struggle, a bitterly contested prize that changed hands multiple times. Fortresses were besieged, cities were sacked, and the local population endured unimaginable suffering as the two empires fought for supremacy. By the late 8th century, the Tibetan Empire has achieved its objective. The He corridor was firmly under its control, and the Tang Dynasty's western territories were effectively cut off from the rest of the empire. Communication and trade routes were disrupted, Tang garrisons were abandoned, and local population was forced to submit to Tibetan rule. And in time, they were reluctantly forsaken by the Tang court in the east. For 60 years, this state of affairs persisted. The Tang Dynasty, preoccupied with its own internal conflicts, gradually lost all hope for reclaiming the West. The western regions remained under Tibetan control, a distant and largely forgotten frontier. However, the seeds of change were already being sown, far from the battlefields of the He corridor. Internal struggle within the Tibetan Empire would ultimately prove to be its undoing. A deeply unpopular Tibetan emperor was assassinated by a Buddhist monk, an act that triggered a period of intense political instability and fragmentation. Regional governors, emboldened by the power vacuum at the center, declared their independence, transforming the empire into a patchwork of warring states. As the Tibetan Empire descended into chaos, its grip on the distant He corridor began to loosen. And it was amidst this fractured landscape that for the Tang, a flicker of hope reignited. Though 6 decades had passed since the Tang armies had marched through this corridor, the memory of a prosperous, formidable dynasty still lingered in the hearts of many Han Chinese, Sogdians, and Uyghurs who still resided in the He corridor. A central figure that rose during this period is actually prominently featured in the game's cinematic itself. It was from this crucible of chaos and uncertainty that Zhang Yichao emerged. Born from a Tang-descended family that had resided in Dunhuang for generations, Zhang had grown up under Tibetan rule and never known the Tang Dynasty firsthand. Despite such realities, he possessed a keen understanding of the region's complex political dynamics. Gathering around him a band of loyal followers, Zhang launched a series of rebellions that soon attracted the attention of other discontented elements within the region, and within a short time, Zhang's rebel forces swelled and rapidly seized control of much of the He corridor. Zhang Yichao, now the undisputed leader of the Uprising, soon consolidated his control over the region and established a provisional government. However, instead of elevating himself to the position of a king, instead he sought to restore the region as part of the Tang Dynasty in the west. The only problem is that their ancestral home of the Tang Dynasty to the east does not even know any of what has transpired in the west at all. In order to reach the Tang court again, it would be a perilous undertaking, and the eastward journey would be extremely arduous, fraught with danger, including crossing stretches of vast desert and hostile territory controlled by rival warlords and nomadic tribes. This is where the narrative of Blood Message begins. A forsaken frontier caught between collapsing empires, was a nameless messenger entrusted with the suicidal mission to deliver Zhang Yichao's message to the Tang in the east. And if we go by historical hindsight, it was an extremely perilous journey. Because of the 10 teams that were each dispatched with the exact message eastward, all but one of the teams all perished along the way.